Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, along with, at the table, Andy Fitzell.
OG.
OG, what's that stand for? Orange juice?
Oh, Steven. Original gangster.
OG, not OJ.
Yeah.
And on the phone, also on the line, we have Dave Secker, NC State Women's Tennis. It helped us with the podcast numerous times. How you doing, Dave?
Doing very well. Happy birthday, sir. You are an OG.
What's OG again one more time? Short-term memory. What do you got?
Original gangster.
Original gangster. 7-0. Whew. It's a milestone. 70. How's it go?
But we put in time today, Jim.
You get 4 laps.
We had a good nature walk, up a hilly walk.
Oh, yeah, the mountains.
You put it in.
Yeah, we'll do that tomorrow morning.
In the time.
And then we went to the gym.
Yep.
Yeah, old man exercise.
Put up 300 on the bench press. I was impressed.
Yeah, I've said it many times. Each lap is 20 years. So you're lucky if you get 4 laps. You're lucky if you can get to be 80. So 70.
Mm-hmm.
The actor Dustin Hoffman said, well, when you're 20, you can double it. You're 30, you can double it. You're 40, maybe you can double it. And his point was middle age is not, when we say, 50's middle age or what, 40's middle age, whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, happy birthday, though, Smith.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I like what you said earlier, though. It's probably one of my main life goals is to get to 100. I just want to outlive all my friends.
That would be lonely, though.
Yeah, I used to hang out with Welby Van Horn. He was very happy to outlive a lot of people. He goes, I'm still here. Made it to 94.
I think 100 is a great goal.
Yeah, I used to always say that to my mom. So I got a lot of text messages today. I used to try to keep it a secret with my birthday, but yeah, it was thank you, 70, 30 to go. 30 to go, like doing sit-ups, with, let's talk college tennis.
Where would you like to start?
I'll start with a question. A lot of changes. What are the changes?
Well, 2 main ones. I guess we should start with the one that just happened. We just had NCAA champions crowned yesterday. We had our first fall NCAA championship. Well, at least my first. I don't know if that's how it was many, many years ago, but certainly in the recent era, it's always been following the team championships. But yesterday finished a week of tennis in Waco, hosted by Baylor. They were the first hosts of the fall. It's a 2-year pilot program, and this was the first of the 2 years where it's basically a separate season. You have multiple qualifying options to get in. You can get in through the All-American, which is the first big championship of the fall. You can get in through the regional championships. There's these new events called the sectional, which are like super regionals. And then there's another route called the conference masters, where each conference sends its like champion or selected player. And you have these multiple opportunities to qualify, and it culminates in the fall NCAA championships, which we just had. So it's a little bit different to the spring, where you basically they take basically the top 54 ranked players in college, and they're in, and then the top player from each conference is in. So in this new format, you have to win your way in. We're doing a 2-year pilot of it, and then they're going to determine what they do moving forward. So we just had our first one now, but it's a pretty big change in college tennis.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on it, and what have some of the other coaches you've talked to thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big mix. I think most people at first don't like change, and you can guess which kind of generation likes change and which one doesn't. But me personally, I like it. I think it's very clear to the players how you get in. We had a great story on our men's side. We had a boy, senior player, Braden Schick, who you have these different qualifying criteria, right? So if you make the quarters of the All-American, so he lost round of 16 in the All-American, so he had first shot at it, he lost. Then if you win the back draw of the All-American, if you make the final, you're in. He had match point in the semifinals of the back draw of the All-American. He lost. So now he's at 2 shots. Mm-hmm. You have to make the final of the regional. He lost in the semis. So he's at 3 shots. Mm-hmm. Then he played the sectional, and you had to make the quarters. He had match points, lost 7-6 in the third, in the round of 16. Then you'd have to make the final of the sectional back draw. It's like a 5th place playoff. he finally won the 5th attempt. So he had 5 attempts, took every attempt. I think he'd lost 8 match points to get into NCAAs as a senior, got in on his 5th attempt. So you can say like definitively how he got in. So I like the idea that you play in. Everybody can get in. So I think one of the knocks on the spring is a little bit sometimes, obviously, if you're lower in the lineup, you can't necessarily get the ranking points to get in there.
Right.
The other thing that I like, the reason I like it a lot is when you get to NCAAs at the end, everybody arrives fresh. Like there's no tournament the week before. You know how sometimes like in the team event, like a few years ago, we played like the final of NCAAs, and one of our girls played their first round singles match in the NCAA tournament at 10 a.m. And like, for example, Schneider had to make a choice between going to the French Open or playing NCAA singles. Like this week, nobody's making any choices. Everybody who qualified pretty much showed up. I think there was 2 injuries, which is the lowest pullouts they've ever had in a 64 draw. Typically in the spring, you'll see it where, you know, people have got their All-American status, they've got their seedings, they've got this. I think they had a year with the men where like 6 of the top 8 seeds pulled out or something. So I like that. The cons are people don't like the separation from the team thing. They think it makes the fall season too long. And I think just the break in tradition seems to be a bit on the con side for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Dave, one thing with something I've never really cared for is the winner of the NCAAs had to be American. I think whoever won the NCAA should get the US Open. Yeah. But I understand now there's a playoff. So the person who won, or say the doubles teams.
So if you win now, you're not in the US Open. So an American male did win. That doesn't mean he's in the All-American, but it puts him in the playoff. So now, whoever the top finishing Americans are will go into a 4-person playoff to play for a wild card to the main draw. So it actually gives more opportunities to Americans to play for the wild card. And the USTA is giving 3 other wild cards to qualify. So even though you don't get the direct entry anymore, you get in the playoff to play for it, and an American will get a wild card. The top American, whoever wins that every year, will get in the main draw. So we're actually getting more wild cards now, singles and doubles. Yep. So the top teams, the top Americans every year will now be in a playoff based on these finishes and their performance through the year. And every year an American college player will get a wild card to the US Open. So there's more opportunity now. I think it's better.
I like the idea of who doesn't matter where they're from. They're playing college tennis. Yeah. Whoever wins that, no matter, it doesn't have to be an American. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't agree with that because, like, you know, we had an English girl who got wild cards to Wimbledon the last 2 years. I don't think they would have done that for an American. I think the Americans should get the US wild cards, to be honest, because I like the way it was always explained to me by USTA, and it made sense to me. Don't think of it as a wild card, think of it as a grant. Basically, they're giving a grant of money to a US player who they're trying to support. I like that explanation. So that made sense to me.
Yeah, that does make sense because now it's almost $100,000.
Yeah, so it's like saying basically instead of giving you a wild card, because let's say you lose the match, you get 1 point, it's not going to change your life. But if you get that grant of money and that thing, that's going to give you a springboard if you're trying to play to go do it. I like that way of thinking, and it would seem strange to me that like we've had English girls 2 of the last 3 years who, because of one NCAAs and doubles, one finished 2 in college, they've been given wild cards by the LTA on that merit. And I don't think they would do it. I think it's hard to expect other countries to do it for players that they're not supporting.
I just think it's unique though. I mean, you know, with college tennis, so many foreigners coming in, I think if they offered that wild card, they would make it even more of a draw for players to come over and to compete in the NCAAs. It might make things stronger. But with this new format, that's definitely different with the four player playoff.
Are you aware of what's called the accelerator program as well now?
Right. Yep.
What is that?
So now, regardless of country, the top ranked college players, I don't know what the number is on the men's side. I think it's about 20. If you finish 10 to 20, you get a certain number of ITF wildcards at different levels. If you finish 5 to 10 and then top 5, on the women's, it's top 5. So one of our girls finished 2 this year. she got 275K wild cards, 260s, and I think 235s.
Yeah.
So you do get, and that doesn't matter which country you're from, and you can use them anywhere around the world in an ITF event. So they are giving a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, that's our boy, Spencer Johnson. He qualified for that.
Yeah, so he's going to be eligible for that program now. And he, based on his performance, if he kind of keeps this up this year, I think he'll be in the running to be maybe in that wildcard playoff as well as one of the top 4 Americans in college.
Yeah, we could come back.
I just saw that boy. Yeah, that's a funny one. Yeah.
Go ahead, and Spencer, you saw the boy?
I saw him. I walked around the corner. His father saw me, enthusiastically waved, as Joey always does. His son came to the net and dumped a volley from about shoulder high to about his ankle in the net, and I just started laughing. Joey just hand in the head. It's the one shot you had to see, Dave. I was like, yep.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time. We've known him 10 years now, but we spent time watching the NCAAs, just in particular watching him. We'll come back to Spencer, but let me ask you more on the changes. The NIL. I recently heard someone say it's like you're always a free agent. Talk to us a little bit about the NIL.
So that's gone through a change as well. So right after COVID, basically they had this landmark lawsuit that said, how can players be restricted from doing deals? Like how can, let's say Wilson wants to offer me as a coach $100,000 to endorse their product. Why can't the player? It just didn't make any sense, right? Like in a free market, that doesn't make any sense. Like these rules were unenforceable. Lawsuits just started appearing, like the lawsuits were out of control. So that was 2021. So basically it's been the absolute wild, wild west in sports. I mean, some of the numbers you hear are crazy, but some of the numbers are real. Like, I mean, there are quarterbacks making $2.5 to $4 million a year in these deals, right? It's crazy money. There are tennis players making 6 figures in deals a year from these collectives, which is this kind of loophole where if a group of donors want to get around the school, let's say like NC State, and say, you're going to put this huge piece of money in a pot and we're going to give these players opportunities to do commercial deals and guarantee the money to come to NC State or any school. And this is what's kind of happening. Nobody likes it. Coaches, administrators, like it's very uncomfortable because it's third party. It's a bit weird. So the NCAA said this doesn't work. The government saying this doesn't work. And really you've got 2 sides to the government. So obviously we just had an election. This really affected it because basically on the Republican side who won out, they're saying we want to stay away from the employee model. Democrats are pushing that these student athletes are really employees of the school. But if you go down that route, it gets really complicated with tax implications. So think about it, right? Let's say a foreign player like you, foreign players, if they become employees, then what work visa are they on? Because you can't be on an F1 student visa making $60,000 a year. That doesn't work. So it's gotten complicated. There was this landmark case called the House settlement. You've probably seen in the news a lot. It's not the House as in the government. It's this guy, Greg House, I think is the first name. He was a swimmer at Arizona State. His lawsuit has kind of rolled a few lawsuits in. And what's been agreed upon now is this new format where back pay a bunch of money to student athletes that they were basically 10 years backwards. They're going to back pay billions of dollars over thousands and thousands of athletes have lost compensation. And then moving forward, the schools are allowed to what's called revenue share. This word rev share is going to start coming up instead of NIL, where the schools are going to be allowed to share an average of 22% of their revenue a year with athletes. It's going to work out to about $20 to $22 million a year for the big schools, the Power 4 schools and Notre Dame. And they're going to share that money out about 75% to football, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, and 5% to Olympic sports. And schools can pay your scholarship, your cost of attendance, and then they can give you what's called a rev share. And it's basically a 1-year contract that you get each year and it can be purely based on your performance, your whatever, marketability, or they can give it to you for whatever reason they want, but it has limits. And what they're trying to do is rein in this idea that just basically whoever's got the most money can go out and buy players, and it has to be, it's kind of like a salary cap. So that's a huge change. But what came out of that is roster limits, scholarship limits are gone. Like in the old way of, you know how we had 8 and 4.5?
Yeah.
Now it's 10 and 10.
Wow.
So for men's tennis, this is like a huge burden has been lifted with this whole like splitting up the scholarships thing. But if they want to go up to the 10 scholarship limits, then the school has to fund that. And that's up to each school to decide how they're going to fund it. I think most schools will probably not go 10 and 10, but certainly it gives them the flexibility. The only negative of that is it's a hard 10. So you can't have walk-ons over 10 people. So if you have 10, if let's say you have a squad with 11 players, you'd have to get rid of one. So this is a whole model shift now with the number of scholarships. So now men's are allowed the same number of scholarships for the school.
And is that 10 and 10 full?
10-10 full, yep.
Wow.
Yep. The whole thing, yeah.
Is that already in place, or when does that come in place?
Starts next fall. So the scholarships, these scholarships we just wrote for the class that just signed were the first scholarships that included that language. So in theory, we've got 2 more scholarships than we used to have. Men's tennis has 5.5 more scholarships than they used to have next year. Each school has to decide how they want to do that, but it totally changes it, yeah.
But that's just for the wealthy schools. The schools that, for example, have huge football programs, generate a lot of revenue.
Exactly, yeah. It's all based on this idea that you can only do it if you share up this amount of your revenue each year. And the amount's going to keep going up each year.
What about the portal? What are your thoughts on the portal? Explain the portal. Tell us what you.
The other thing that these lawsuits basically are trying to solve is the general feeling is the portal's out of control. The portal was seen as this way to make things transparent, but it just made it just basically just lit things on fire because, the old process of transferring, there was like, not like a taboo to it. It certainly was an uncomfortable thing, right? Like you had to go meet with your coach, you go do this, and there were course conversations. And what happened with the portal was now, let's say one of my players is like, you know what, Dave, I'm just tired of hearing your voice. They just click a button. They're on the portal to transfer. They don't have to talk to me. They don't have to talk to Simon. They don't have to talk to anybody. They can just click a button, send a document to compliance, and they're on the transfer portal ready to go. And you can imagine in situations where things aren't going well, like this big money's being thrown around, the portal just became this wildfire. Like in football and basketball, the portal is like, it's almost unmanageable. And so much of it's not the high-end schools because the players at the top schools, obviously high-performing programs, that everybody's very well compensated. The scholarships are tremendous. But what's happening is a lot of kids, I think, are hearing these stories of people getting money, hearing these stories of these great deals, hearing these stories of things. They go in the portal. When you go in the portal, you give up the rights to your scholarship. But when you go in the portal, just because you've heard these stories, it doesn't always materialize for you. And a lot of kids just end up staying in the portal and no one really picks them up, or the situation actually gets worse. And, it's easy for coaches to sit back there and say, look, grass isn't always greener on the other side. But a lot of these kids, and they don't quite figure out what's going to happen and they end up in bad situations. So the feeling is we've got to nothing's going to really rein in on the portal, but this new transparency of how the scholarships are going to work. And basically the idea is this NIL stuff or in-house, like the schools have to get control of this money sharing. I think everybody agrees that if football's generating $80 million a year at a school, that these football players deserve to be compensated. I don't think anybody has a problem with that. I don't think, if you have this star basketball player and they're selling out arenas and Nike wants to give them a contract on the side and sell shoes, I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Like they're worth it, right?
Yeah.
But I think the idea is that let's bring it in-house and make it transparent, not these like side deals and these agencies outside of the schools that are doing these deals, because I think ultimately that exposes the players when there may be, and you've heard, there's a lot of stories like where kid goes to a school, usually in the big revenue sports, and they're promised like this much money. Then, they get to week 2 or 3 and they haven't received $1. It's like, well, who are you going to sue? who are you gonna? It's got nothing to do with the school. It's got nothing to do with the coaches. It's these outside parties offering these deals, and then all of a sudden, there's nothing, and the kid's left high and dry, and everybody just sitting there like, well, what do we do now?
Dave, with the rev share, obviously women's basketball, for example, it's skyrocketed with attendance, but the Knotty Pines with gender equity, Title IX, it sounds like a lot more money is going towards the men than the women. What are your thoughts on that?
It's the hard one, right? That's the one that people don't really know right now. So the general, they're waiting really for the federal government to give them some guidance. And obviously you can imagine like lawyers the last few years in this realm have just been sitting there like laughing, right? They're like, they can't write these lawsuits fast enough. So the lawyers right now, I think what the general feeling is Title IX applies more to scholarships. Because when you talk about revenue sharing, it's hard, I think, to make an argument that if, let's say, football generates $80 million a year, and let's say women's basketball loses money on the year, and most women's programs, there's no real any women's program that can generate its own money. They're just, even though the attendances are good and things like that, they're still spending more than they're generating, right? Only really football and men's basketball can generate money. There's maybe a handful of baseball programs in the country that can generate revenue. So I think what it seems to be right now is as long as the scholarship piece stays the same and that they're funding the scholarships at the same level, men and women, that the revenue share piece is going to be more tied to what you actually generate and the market value stuff. But again, this hasn't hit yet. The lawsuit is not final yet. It's been agreed upon. It's going to finalize in January, but it's not actually settled yet. So no one, obviously the athletic departments involved are being very, very cautious with this. And it's going to take probably a couple of years and there'll be more lawsuits. But this basically, if they settle this lawsuit, there's going to be a 10-year protection on lawsuits where people can't come after the NCAA for about 10 years and the schools. And they're going to try and let it play out where say, okay, if we get this right, and the Title IX piece, everybody's on edge about that. But the feeling is, as long as you balance the scholarships, you're going to be okay.
I have a question. Maybe you've already answered this, touched upon it. Say, for example, the New York Yankees with all their money,
the
TV contracts they've had for years and years. You think of Texas or Ohio State that have such large budgets. Is there going to be a salary cap that they have in pro sports, market sharing, like say, and I follow the NHL? How can a Winnipeg compete with a Toronto? How can a small school compete with a big school?
Yep. No, exactly. So the math is 22% of the average revenue of the Power Four conferences. So you've got the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12 because the Pac-12 kind of disappeared, right? So it's the average revenue of those four, which is all the schools you just mentioned, plus Notre Dame. So it's 22% of the average is the salary cap each year. That's how they're working out. And every year it's going to go up by about 2%. So it will get up into the 30s eventually. But right now, it's like you say, right now it's like the baseball model where basically whoever has the most money can spend the most money on NIL. You might have heard like there's stories that Ohio State's football team this year maybe cost $25 million in NIL. Obviously, NC State's not spending that type of money, right? It's just like the Yankees versus the Rays, right? But this new model will be like an NBA style or NFL style salary cap where it's based on averages.
Wow. It's definitely college sports is now going to be pro sports.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's probably going to end up being something in between, right? And I think it's probably the best. I think the amateur model has been very hard to be behind for the last few years because there was always some hypocrisy to it. Like, why can't the coaches take all these deals? And the players not like, you think of some of the great athletes who play, like I was here when Zion Williamson was at Duke, like that guy could sell shoes.
Yeah.
Like if Nike wants to pay that guy and he's selling shoes, why on earth shouldn't we be allowed to make money from Nike? I don't understand why in a free market, if people can generate money, why can't they just make their money? You know, like you think about like tennis players, like you've seen these ones about taking the prize money, right? Like remember this girl Fiona Crawley? She qualified at the U.S. Open and then couldn't take the money. It's like if you win those matches and you earn that money, like why can't you have your money?
Well, you could
I mean, she went and worked.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, you could say you had 300 stringing jobs. You can take some for expenses, right?
I mean, if she went and worked at, I don't know, if she went and worked the summer at like JP Morgan Chase and earned that money, no one would bat an eye. But if she wins tennis matches, it's like a problem. Right. Yeah. It doesn't make the money. If you earn your money, I don't understand. It doesn't give her an advantage. I don't think that gives her an advantage playing against us. I think if she earned the money, she earned the money, right?
Well, it goes back to the Olympics for the longest time. And again, coming back to ice hockey, being a fan of hockey, the 1980 U.S. Miracle on Ice, that was all, 22 amateurs.
Yeah, all amateurs, yeah.
22 players perhaps, and all around the age of 22. But the Soviets at that time, they were training year round, and they really were, in one sense, professionals. Perhaps not as far as the way they were making money, but their lifestyle. So the Olympics, in a lot of ways, it was great that it was a way for the amateurs to shine. So the dream team in basketball certainly changed that.
Yeah, completely.
That was a watershed, right? Once those guys were allowed to play.
Yeah. Tell us about, like say, D3 tennis now. I've talked to a lot of D3 coaches this year. With now just players or the top teams, the Division I teams, just having 10, a lot of kids are going to be sent to the lower level. In other words, some coaches aren't going to have large rosters.
Yeah, there's going to be limits. I mean, you definitely see it I think you see it more on the men's side than the women's, but these teams that carry 12, 14, 16 people. Mm-hmm. I remember you doing a podcast with Chuck Creasy. I want to say he used to carry 16 players sometimes.
Yeah.
Something like that. I think if I was a Division III coach, I'd certainly be saying, at the end of the day, there is a limit now. There's only a certain number of spots. I mean, for example, what they've told us NC State is, as a result of this settlement, what we're going to do, I think last year we had 600 student athletes. Our scholarship numbers will go up. So we're going to spend a lot more money on scholarships. There'll be a lot more scholarships at NC State, but there'll be 120 less student athletes. And I think you're going to see that across the big sports schools. I think a typical Power 4 school like us probably has anywhere between 500 and 600 athletes. You're going to see about 100 reduction. So the question is, where do those 100 go? And that's across all sports. Yeah. But if I was a Division III coach, that's the way I would be thinking right now. Absolutely. And I think their model is so clean as well.
But the rags to riches, the Cinderella story, the walk-on, that's not going to exist.
No, but there are still going to be 10 spots. So how many walk-ons came from outside the top 10, on a team? Yeah. I can see it where a walk-on was like an 8, a 9, a 10, right? There will still be 10 spots. So I don't think that's going to go away as much, that story. There's still, because I don't think there's really that guy who's 13 on his team. But in some ways, I think for the other divisions, I think especially Division III, because of what their model looks like with the American and domestic players and the academics, I would have thought in some ways it could be a positive for them, where there might be some more options for recruiting for them. And obviously their product is so good, I think it does match up with the people who might be affected by this. But certainly I've heard stories in the last few weeks of coaches having to call recruits who they thought they were going to be able to recruit and offer a scholarship to, and then all of a sudden with this new settlement, not. Now, the other downside to this is, like at NC State, we're very lucky. We're not going to lose any funding in tennis. We're being very well supported. This is basically just growth, growth, growth. There are some very prominent programs who will come out in the news in a few weeks who are going to lose scholarships. And it will really be the end of them being competitive. Like really, really good programs where their athletic department is saying, we're not going to fund tennis at this level anymore. We're going to put all of our money into these sports and these scholarships. So there will be negatives to this. Like NC State, we've been very well taken care of with this stuff, and we feel like we're in a really good position. I think for our men's team, it's going to be really positive too. But there's going to be some ones where it's not, and they'll be quite shocking.
Will those drops happen by the fall of 2025?
They're already been put into place now. You'll see the knock on next fall where they've had to call recruits who've been committed to the school for 6 months, who've been told last week that scholarship does not exist anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really sad. And in other sports, like the bigger roster sports, like a soccer or something like that, there's going to be quite a bit of that. It's going to be quite sad for a year or two because there's going to have to be this kind of cull to get the roster sizes down. So it's kind of this weird thing because scholarship money is going up, but roster sizes are coming down. So there'll be less athletes on more money, which is obviously, if you're in that window, is great. But if you're not, it's very sad. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, before all of these changes happened, does the NCAA send out any kind of survey for coaches? Because one thing like the WTA tour they've done is they have it, the coaches commission, they'll send out, here's some rules that we're thinking about putting into play, and you can kind of cast your opinion or your vote on it. Did the NCAA do anything like that where coaches could voice their opinions before they put it into play?
I just think it's quite sweet that you think the NCAA cares about us like that, Andy. The NCAA is so...
I'll take that as
so
probably a no.
It'd be a no. They're so mired in laws. The only conversations they have right now are with lawyers. They've just been like under the gun so badly since this the landmark case was this Alston case. Was the video game case where the guy basically said, how can you use me in a video game and make money off it, but I can't make money off my own image? Tell me. And of course he was wrong. He was right. But no, the NCAA is not. No. Like our administrators and all these types of people, absolutely. They're like, what does this mean for you guys? What do you need? What do you want? Where are the opportunities? Like, what are you worried about? But I think the NCAA over the next 10 years is going to be paying something like it's close to $3 billion in back pay to these athletes, like in penalties.
Man.
Like that's how big of a hole they're in. Now they've got that kind of money, but no, they're not really interested in anyone's feelings right now. It's been a rough 5 years for the NCAA.
I know Steve's thinking about the acronym NCAA.
No clue about athletics.
Exactly. I saw it coming.
No clue about athletics.
Oh my God.
The question.
I tell you what, though, they're happy that the Republicans won, because if the Democrats would have won this one, this employee movement would have taken it to a whole nother level.
Interesting. Very interesting. With moving on, how about recruiting? We obviously parents listen to our podcast. We have parents of players who aspire to play college tennis. How does all this affect recruiting? Is it the same?
I don't think on the women's side you're going to see much impact. I don't think there's any real negatives on the inside. Like I said, I've heard a few sad stories, but I can count on one hand the negative stories where this is going to impact a few programs. Most programs on the women's side are either going to stay at 8 or even go above. So to me, that just means more opportunity, better scholarship packages. I don't think there's really going to be any ill effect on the women. I think you're going to see a massive change on the men, where all of a sudden coaches this year thinking they have 4.5 scholarships. Next year they could have, I don't think you're going to see many who go to 10, but they could easily go to 6, 8. So I think there's going to be way more scholarships on the men's side in the coming years at the programs who are doing well. So there's going to be, the ones who've got the money and the ones where tennis is important. I think you could see scholarships go I wouldn't be shocked if the average men's scholarship is 7 or 8 in a year or two.
So,
at these big programs. I think it's going to be a lot more.
Explain that again. Why wouldn't they go to 10?
Well, you got to remember, if you go to 10, you got to balance the books, right? So it's all about Title IX. You have to balance the scholarship opportunities between men and women, right? So just think about it this way. At NC State, for example, so football is going to 105 scholarships. Let's take men's basketball. They're going to go to 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
Try making 120 women's scholarships.
Gotcha.
The math's not easy, right? So you got women's basketball, let's say 15. Let's say softball, let's say 25 they're going to go to, I think, something like that now, right? Okay, well, now you're at 40. Tennis, let's say women's tennis, just to say nice round number, they go to 10. Okay, now we're at 50. We're not even halfway. So you still got to balance it. So you can't just go way through the roof.
Yeah.
You've still got to, for every scholarship you add with the men, you've probably got to add more than one with the women to balance it out. So they can't just go straight to 10 because it would be nice to think that eventually they could, but I don't think that would ever balance with Title IX. And Title IX definitely holds to the scholarship piece.
Well, the non-revenue male sports, like say wrestling, has been obliterated over the years.
No, their scholarship things went up.
Is that right? But for years, it seemed like...
I think they had 9.9 or something for like 25 guys.
It seemed for years like there could be, schools that had women's tennis but not men's tennis, or they had women's cross country and not men's cross country, so they could match up that scholarship that at one point was, I think, locked at 95 for football. Yeah.
No, this should, in theory, with this, create a lot more scholarship opportunities on the men's side. It's not going to happen all at once. I think it'll be a gradual thing because you got to remember for these ADs, it's like this didn't exist 18 months ago. Now all of a sudden next year they're getting a bill for $20 million that they've got to find. So they've got to be smart with their money, and it's going to take a few years. First of all, they've got to figure out how to get this money. Then they got to figure out how to be competitive in football and basketball. And then once that ship rights, then they can kind of say, okay, here's where we're at financially, revenue streams, things like that. How do we grow this? And then they can kind of start building up everything else. But I would like, from what I've heard, it's been incredibly positive on the men's side, where I think there's going to be at least 2 or 3 more scholarships on the men's tennis sides at the major schools. And I think that will trickle down a bit.
It seems to me that the level of play will go up through all this, with the ATP, WTA accelerator programs and things like that. What do you think? Has the level of play changed in championships at all, or did you notice any?
I mean, you think you're just seeing with the recruits coming in, right? Like, I mean, you've been out there doing this. I mean, I don't think, like I think we go back to the original thing. We talk about amateurism, right? Like, how do you define professional tennis? So to me, you can comment on this, Andy. We tell recruits, professional tennis is Grand Slam qualifying or better, in our opinion. I think a player who's 400 is a very good tennis player. I don't think they're a professional, and they're certainly not making money. But in my opinion, and this is what Simon and I tell recruits, if you're in Grand Slam qualifying, you are a professional tennis player. You're at that level where you're kind of playing those events. You're getting access to those kind of revenue amounts. I think you are a professional. So to me, anything from there down, college is a better financial path now because of all this. You obviously don't have the expenses. You've got teams of people around you. It's not like you're slumming it. We're in some nice hotels, flying on decent flights. You're getting very well taken care of. So I think that level of tennis is going to be more and more, and I think you're seeing it, is going to be more and more where, like, what am I doing? Why do I need to be at this 15K for 6 weeks somewhere, I can't pronounce, losing money, when I could be in college working towards a degree? I could still play the pro events in the summer. Another lawsuit that's coming is the prize money lawsuit, where players are suing that why can't I take my prize money? And rightfully so, because if the quarterback on the team is making $2.5 million, why can't I take my $25,000 for qualifying at the Open?
Yeah.
So I think players 300 to 500 are very clearly recognizing college is a much safer space and a much more positive environment, let's say, being out there under 35s and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, your comment on pro tennis, Joel Drucker, the journalist, is a friend of mine, and we talk about this a lot, where players will say, when I played on the tour, and for us, the tour is, the ATP or the WTA tour, but then you find out someone played, qualies in Querétaro, Mexico, a couple of times, and they'll say that they played on the tour. It's a little bit different. There's levels and levels, right? Like, same with baseball. I mean, there is pro baseball, but it's a farm league.
Well, I've got a question. The NIL money, zeroed in on tennis. I mean, some schools, you just hear this and you hear that. Oh, this kid at Duke or this kid at Ohio State, this is what they're getting paid. And certainly the numbers are not consistent, but the numbers are high. So my question is, kids are going to make more money on the NIL than they're going to make when they first come out and play pro tennis.
100%.
For sure. So why? And you have no expenses.
But with that, can they do whatever they want with the NIL money?
Their money, yeah. It's no different to working at Starbucks. Yeah, it's their money. Yeah, and that's the whole fallacy of it, right? Because we're basically saying if we call it this, the kids can take the money. But if it's in an event, then that's different. So basically what we're saying is if they go to a local car dealership and they do a meet and greet and someone gives them $50,000, that's okay. But if they go to qualifying at Miami and they get a wild card and they qualify through and win a round, they get $50,000, that's not okay. I just don't understand what the difference is. Like one you earn, one is literally just set up for you. That's where this whole fallacy has fallen apart, and that's why things have ended up where they've ended up. Coaches don't no one likes it. This NIL thing, it's uncomfortable. It's basically a loophole.
Maybe it's the whole idea of amateurism, where if you won that money in a pro event, then you're basically a professional.
We argued this with our buddy Schneider, right? Obviously, Schneider was one of the landmark cases with this argument in tennis.
Yeah. Because
obviously what she was doing, she as a freshman played in the Australian Open and qualified, right?
Yeah.
So we had agencies, the CEO of WTA, the ITF, explain this to the NCAA, define professional tennis. So our argument was this: in any other sport, NBA, NFL, any sport, you are a professional when you sign a contract or an agreement that makes you part of the retirement and the compensation package. That only happens at WTA level when you appear in 5 main tour events. So ITF, it doesn't exist at all. Like you can play 735Ks in a row. You are not entitled to any compensation when you retire. You are not a member of any organization. You are a free agent. When you play in the WTA or the ATP, once you appear in a certain number of events, you become a member. Once you have a certain number of years service, you become vested, just like I am at a university when I work. That is what professionalism is. But tennis, they wouldn't define it like that. They defined it as this idea of it's how much money you win versus your expenses, which doesn't make any sense. Because that's just totally subjective to how much you spend. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't line up with any other sport. Every other sport, it's like based on when do you become a member of the organization, when do you become vested and things like this. So tennis has just been lagging way behind with this.
For our listeners, a couple of things. Just so both names, somebody's listening for the first time, it's Simon Ershaw, who's head coach at NC State, who Dave works with. And then you use the last name Schneider, but it's Diana Schneider, who's up to 12 in the world now?
12 in the world. Yeah, who would have thunk you after she hung out with Fitzell all of a sudden? So when she just undid some of my coaching.
Well, I'll come back to recruiting with some of the alphabet soup, but while we're talking about Diana Schneider, and this ties into recruiting as well, Emma Navarro, and years ago, but she's still playing and actually going to not retire, is Collins. Is that helping you as a college coach that more junior players are thinking, okay, I'm going to go to college?
It's not helping me with the kid. It's helping me with the coaches and the parents. It brings a credibility to it. Yes. I don't think it's the players. I think the players, they're thinking about different things, but the players or the federation or the coaches are seeing now, like, I think Emma is ranked 9, Collins is 10. Diana is 12. Peyton Stearns is like in the 30s. Maya Sharif. These players, I'm sure I'm forgetting one, but these players are. And the other thing as well, when you listen to them talk, and it's like, well, how was the college doing? They're like, it's great. Like it's just, you don't have to. People are there to support you. It's like they're really helping, and they're young as well, so they're going to be doing this for. I mean, I think Emma is probably 22. Diana's finally not a teenager anymore, which is great. So they're young. They're going to be doing this for a long time. I think with players, it's like whatever, but the parents and the federations and the coaches, they're finally saying like, yeah, this is starting to make a lot more sense on the women's side. I think they're already kind of there with the men, but I think with the women, they're starting to understand like, yeah, there's been some really, really good players in college the last few years.
With, so again, Collins has been on the circuit for a long time, but not that anybody on the WTA tour or their opponents are going to listen to this podcast, but let's talk about the whys. I mean, to me, I'm not saying what their strengths and weaknesses are, but like say Navarro, it just seems like she's just been steadily climbing. I remember, she was always competitive, even in the 12s, but seems like she gets so much fitter. I know you've coached against her and you've coached Diana Schneider. Why don't you just expound about why you think they're where they are now?
Well, talking about Emma first, I mean, she was in our conference. We played her many, many, many times. Diana played her quite a few times. And I think your points are great. You see that steady progression. I think things maybe people do or don't know about her. She's had a very long-term coach, Peter. I hope I'm saying his right name right, Ayers, who's been a very steady voice with her for a very long time. And he's like a high-class guy. I think when you listen to her talk, especially sometimes after she loses, how mature she is. The thing I would say with Emma, like, she's a player who I don't think I think in college is like one way to be great in college. She plays every single point. Like she plays every point of the match. Like I remember when she was first in college, obviously we were very impressed by her junior record. I hadn't seen her play a ton. We did okay against her, but it's not like she was blowing you off the court. But then you watch her play like multiple times. You're like, this girl mentally plays every single point of the match. And I haven't had many players who could do that. I'm sure you could probably speak to that, but there's only a few you see in college each year who are at that level mentally. She was there straight away as a freshman. I think physically she's gotten a lot better. Yeah, she was very athletic before, but I think she's just got her fitness to a level where she can just do it week in, week out. She's obviously very comfortable on the clay as well, the way she slides and moves, so she can play on multiple surfaces. I think she probably improved most on the hard courts more so, I would say. But from a maturity level, I think that family background she has, the way they are with her, and especially the coach, like she is a very, very mature. Everything they do is very well thought out. And I think she's been very professional since way before she was a professional. I think just the way she approaches things and that group approaches things. And you can see with her, she's just very, very steady. Diana is called D, but she's a little different. She's maybe not quite as steady when she first came out, but obviously a very aggressive player. She could, really with her, I know what I dealt with and Andy was really for her actually addressing more the lower days and some of the weaker parts. And she was very good about that. But you talk about the character, probably she's very brave. Like, not afraid to tell you she's extremely scared. She's extremely nervous, but obviously I think committed to playing quite aggressive tennis, especially with some of like her forehand is a little different to most that you see. And she's very committed to playing that way. And from a character standpoint, I think one of the knocks on Dee was maybe that she wasn't that fit. We do a tremendous amount of physical testing. And Dee certainly needed a little bit of discipline and growing up with like taking care of herself, but her base fitness is tremendous. She is someone who can practice a lot and she likes practicing a lot. I think some of it is a little bit of an anxiety relief for her, but she is someone who really, really puts in hours on the court. And I think as long as she has the right direction with that, she's very happy to do it. I think it actually calms her quite a lot. But they're very different personalities. They're actually quite good friends now, I think. They've become buddies. But both of them, they really have work ethic. Like that, they can really put in some hours.
Haven't they played doubles a time or two?
Yeah.
Yeah. Played the start of the year, didn't they, Andy? That was during your run.
Yeah, I mean, they got to the quarters of the French.
Diana Schneider, she's got the Flintstone forehand. Bam, bam, bam.
They call it Thor. She just waves that hammer up in the air, charges it with lightning, and then starts swinging. Yeah.
And then Collins has this great competitive spirit. I think that comes also. I mean, she had that from the get-go, but I think that's part of being in that college atmosphere. What do you think's thoughts on that?
She was before me, but I know she played for Gilbo, Mark Gilbo of Virginia, who was a tremendous competitor. Yeah, I mean, she strikes me as someone who would like pretty much compete at anything. That girl. I mean, I haven't personally been around her much, but in the time I've seen her in person, you can like feel the intensity with her. And yeah, you do get that in these college matches, and it gets chippy. I remember we were up in Charlottesville last year, and I can't remember who. You had an English guy with you who was asking me like, "Oh man, the crowd was pretty intense." And I was like, "Yeah, it's like a Tuesday, you know, like the good crowds are fun, you know, like yeah, the college thing, it gets chippy, it's intense, but I think it helps with the stage fright and things like that when you first get out there, right? It can be a little bit intimidating, but when you're always getting yelled at by somebody in college, so I think that helps with it, yeah.
Yeah, the English guy, Lawrence Hyde. Actually, somebody's been in our corner for a long time, 15 plus years. Matt Clore, he was short stint as a USTA coach. He was assigned to work with Collins at the Aussie Open. She had a good run, and Matt said, well, if I was walking down a dark alley and I was going to be mugged, I'd like to be with her.
Yeah, she stands up for herself. I remember the clip recently where, she just said, hey, this is not as, easy as it looks. You want to come down here and try it and then, show some respect.
Yeah, right.
So she's not afraid to.
And she plays like that. I mean, she's going for it, right? She's going to throw the punch, right?
Yeah.
Dave, with the alphabet soup and ranking, rankings, rating, I heard John Roddick say, this was many years ago, that if a kid's ranked 70 in the USTA, 70 the ITF, it's a flip of a coin who wins. And I know a lot of parents have been told if you want to be a college player, you play USTA tournaments. You want to be a pro player, you play ITF tournaments. Could you comment on the UTR, the WTN, the whole alphabet soup?
I don't think that's true anymore. I mean, we've got a new one now. We've got this, have you heard of the new one, the WTN, which is like the UTR, except it's upside down. So the lower the numbers, the better. And now in college, we're using that as the official number. So like when we seed our tournaments in the fall and our selection criteria, they're based on that. So we have a new one. We needed some more letters in that alphabet soup. We needed to go to like the Cyrillic alphabet and just go like 28 letters. It's better. So we've thrown a few more in there.
I've heard from a couple guys. Sorry, Dave.
Yeah?
I've heard from a couple guys that say the WTN is not as accurate as the UTR.
It's not got as much, yeah. I think I like it. Like Simon loves that kind of stuff, and he's like, all right, here's two lists. Which one looks right to you? And I always seem to pick the WTN one. And I like the WTN. What I like about it is every federation's in on it. So eventually, the data is going to catch up. The UTR is very, very good. But obviously, it's the political stuff, right? Like certain federations aren't giving them information. College isn't giving them any information anymore. Their colleges, they're having to like enter it themselves, or UTR is having to find it on college websites. So it feels like the momentum is with the WTN. I think the UTR, obviously, what they're doing, like these money events and have you seen these PTT events, like these 25,000? It's like a round robin play based on your level, and then you get a good amount of money. You get like up to 6 matches.
Yeah, guaranteed matches.
These are awesome events. They're doing all these like kind of money tournaments now, which are fantastic. Like college players are playing them like crazy.
The money UTR tournaments, I think as you both know, there's so many pluses with the French system to just keep people playing.
Yeah.
These really good players come out of college and they can still be playing tournaments. I was told the WTN, one of the reasons it was put in place because the federations wanted to have more control over gambling. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah. I mean, so if you go on, what I've been told is if you go on right now, 24 hours a day, there is a UTR prize money event being streamed. And basically somewhere, somebody in the world is gambling on that event. And that is for sure, that's the dark side of it. Like, where is all this money coming from? Gambling is the answer to that question. And with the ITF, obviously they've had this big stand about the gambling issues that they've had, and the gambling issues for them, it's all at the lower level events, right? They're not having gambling problems at tour level, but they're having gambling issues at like the 15K level. And yeah, part of it is that. Part of it is also like, I think it was the German Federation basically said, data is a commodity, just like oil, just like lumber, just like anything. And I think like the German Federation said to the UTR, you can't just take our data. You have to pay for it, and we're going to price it. It's not just something that just is public. This is intellectual property. This is our data. It is a commodity. There is a price on it. And I think with UTR, that became a barrier with some federations where, your data is only as good as what feeds into it. And if certain federations, especially large ones, like say Germany, the DTB, wouldn't give that information, it devalues the UTR stuff, right? Whereas with the ITF number, all the federations are basically partners in it. So everybody's feeding that information, which it'll take a few years, I think, before the algorithm catches up. But obviously with that much power behind it and that much information constantly being fed in, plus college is the official partner with it now as well, the information is going to get to a certain point where once the data scientists figure it out, I think it's going to be a very good tool, yeah.
What advice do you have for parents when it comes down to what path to take? What kids do? I mean, obviously there's different ages.
I don't think I think it's a mix. I think you got to factor in cost as well. I think it's what's available for you. Look, college coaches are going to find your UTR results if you play UTR events. If you play, there's going to be WTN events now. If you play those, we'll find your results. If you play USTA events, all these results are getting fed to central hubs now where we can get you. Like a lot of these things we get now, like on the WTN page or a UTR page, we can see all of it anyway. So I think for parents, they've got to do what's best for them and for their kid, where I don't think it's one. I think it's going to be a blended thing. The thing is, they've got to keep playing. You've got to play. And the more you're playing, and if the results are there, you will be seeing these coaches will find you. And to be honest, now with the way these hubs work and these information systems, more coaches would find you. So I think the biggest thing is to play. We saw one of these unintended consequences where people started worrying, oh, if I lose this match, my UTR is going to go down. Like, no, dude, play. Like, play the match. The answer to the question is always yes, play. Like, it's the whole idea of all these things. And I think you're right with UTR. The whole point was to get people more access to play. Is just play. The more you're playing, it's going to help you. It's going to help everything. And hopefully by having a bigger marketplace with this stuff, whether you do, if parents have the choice of a USTA or a UTR event or an ITF event, it's whatever's cost effective for that family. Hopefully it does just ultimately give them more access to play, and their kid will be seen more and the information will get out there. And a lot of these events are streamed now as well. You can watch them.
Right. Well, I think you've already said it, match count, to increase the match count. And then the formula, what do you pay per match? If you're playing very few matches, and obviously a lot of parents of really young kids, like 12 and under, they're flying all over the country so they're not playing that many matches, and so each match is pretty expensive. In July, our recruiting starts for the new grade, whatever the next grade coming up is, right? And I always basically just start, like Simon, I go through the list and you talk to these kids, and I'll have like a little bio in front of me, and it's like, okay, in the last 12 months, kids played 70 matches. They've won 54 of them. I'm like, okay, this is a good player. Like I'm going to watch them, and I'll talk about a forehand or a backhand or an overhead or whatever. But if players are playing 70, 80 matches, like you just know there's just a certain level to these players, and that the competitiveness, and they're going to be fine. Like match count is so, so important. You got to play the right tournaments where you're getting enough matches at each tournament. But you're not going to get to 70, 80 matches if you're not going like 2-1 at each event. Mm-hmm. And you got to select the right matches to your level. You talk about someone like Diana. I think she played the third or fourth most matches on tour this year. I know the year she was with us, she played 97 matches. Like 97 in 12 months. Like if you're working on the right things and you can do that,
you're going to get better as a player. You play that kind of match count because you just in that situation so much, especially if you're getting charted, things like this. With that, you're getting so much information and experience. It's like, how is your level not going to go up as long as you can physically handle it?
And with Diana Schneider having been at NC State, is she doing any remote studying? Is she taking any classwork, any NC State courses?
She's part of we have a program for professional athletes called the Pac Connect, where it's like a special fund. It comes from athletic director, where if you go to the NFL early, NBA, tennis player, they pay for you to connect at your own time, and you take like a smaller course load, 1-2 courses. But yeah, no, she's part of that. Yeah, they wanted to finish a degree. If she wants to finish a degree, absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty important to us. And most top schools have a program similar to that because it's a positive for all parties if they're an alum. It's a positive for all parties if they get the degree as well. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she's part of that program.
Tell our listener, how many years have you been at NC State? And how the players are doing, obviously Diana Schneider, 12 in the world, but you have other players playing on the tour. And then also talk about the war of financial attrition. How are they sticking and how are they staying out there?
Yeah. I've been 6 years now. So we've done 6 seasons. So we have, let's rattle off. Obviously Diana, she's tremendous. She's getting a lot of attention. She's 12 in the world, was like the Olympic silver medalist this year, doubles. Probably our next one who's been down, played. We've been in 10 straight Grand Slams. If I just rattle off the Grand Slam people, Millie Rajecki finished 2 in college this year, English girl. It's a good story. Like you were saying, rags to riches, didn't make our lineup as a freshman. On that Final Four team you saw in Nona, she finished number 2 in college this year. She's now playing full time. She's already in the top 500. She got a wild card into the pre-qualifying event at Wimbledon, which is for Brits. She won that this year. Then earned a wild card into qualifying in singles, and then she's won quite a few doubles events, like 75, and then she won 100 this year. So they gave her 100. They gave her a wild card into doubles. She's out there right now. She's top 300 in doubles for sure. She might be better. I might be underselling her on that one. And she's broken in top 500 in singles. Alana Smith and Anna Rogers, who you watched in that Final Four in Nona years ago. Alana's from DC area and Anna's from Connecticut. They were in the US Open this year in doubles. Anna's about 300 in singles, so is La. They're both sitting right at about 150. So they're in doubles. They're sneaking into like the lower WTA events. Abigail Rincelli, who's also on that team that you saw, the girl from Sarasota area, who who did you have out there spying on her for me?
Coach Ilya.
Ilya was out there, yeah, watching her when she was in high school. She actually just got into WTA 125. She's top 250 in doubles. Jada Daniel is out there, a kid from Philly who's right around 200 in doubles, 250. Priska Nugroho, Indonesian girl, just made the final of 100K in Japan. She got to 175 very quickly. She won 6 events out of 7 in Monastir when she left us after a freshman. She turned pro, and then she had an injury. She was out for over a year, but she's just come back. She's already back to like 250 pretty quickly. She'd been out for a little while, but she's made the final of 100, and she qualified and won a round at the WTA event the week before. So she's out there. We've got a good group of them out there, and they're all probably further ahead in doubles than they are in singles, the exception of Diana, but they're all pretty tasked to sticking with it. It is a grind. It's kind of, they get to that level where they're winning like the 75K level. If you can win that level at ITF, you're right there where you're getting close to sniffing the Grand Slams. But then the key is, can you sneak into some of these 125 and 250 qualities? And that's kind of where a lot of those guys are sitting. One of the hard things at that level is actually harder to get into doubles than it is in singles. Now, a lot of them are actually stronger in doubles maybe than they are in singles, but it's actually harder to get into the doubles draws because of the way advanced entries work and because of the need, obviously, for a partner with the same ranking. It is quite tricky, that part. The first bit in doubles is actually a little bit harder.
Dave, you mentioned the Russian and the Indonesian. They both left after 1 year. How about the other girls?
Those were all 4 years. Those were all 4 years. All of our American players have been 4 years. The Indonesian was a bit surprising, to be honest. She was a bit of a shock. Basically, there was no discussion to leave after a year, but she actually had a losing record in 15Ks when she came to us. She went to Monastir in the Middle East and won 6 out of 7 events, singles and doubles, and just skyrocketed. Obviously, if you're an athlete from Indonesia, these deals and stuff, they appear real quickly. Like, she was doing TV commercials while she was a freshman in college with us in Indonesia. Even like on a cell phone commercial in Indonesia. Like, they're looking for athletes. It's a huge population country. She did very well. She's got a good personality. Like, she's very likable. Like, it comes across very well with the media. And sponsors and that were all over her, and they offered her a lot to go, and she did. And it was unfortunate. We felt like she needed at least 1 more year. Obviously, Diana's situation was a bit crazy. She, the freshman, she broke the top 100. So I think Simon and I were like, it's time to go, That was a pretty natural progression. But for the rest of them, it's kind of, they work their way through their 4 years. They kind of get to the top 10 singles, certainly top 5 doubles level in college. They feel like they can certainly play at that level, certainly the highest ITF level. And then it's really when they get their opportunities in WTA, do they take them or not?
Yeah, you can jump in anytime. One thing I want to do is ask about the fans. I was fortunate with Yvonne and a few others. We went to Baylor University, Joyce Carvano, beautiful, beautiful place, amazing athletic facility.
Amazing, yeah.
But we watched, not enough, but we watched some matches online. It didn't seem like they had the fans. I always think of Georgia. What does college tennis need to do to get more fans?
Well, I think that's kind of the sticking point is we can't really decide on a home. And there's this argument that it needs to be on campus. The problem is on campus. Like Baylor I was just there all last week. The facility is incredible what they built there. It's town. I haven't been there in 20 years. The town is unrecognizable. The renaissance that's been through. It's great. It was fantastic. Like the event was run top class. But you're right. If Baylor's not playing, who's going to show up and watch NC State play UNC in a doubles match? They're just not going to show up that much, right? And that's been the knock on it. There's been some people in the media in college who kind of been knocking that. It keeps going back to this Georgia thing. But to me, it's the same thing. It's like, I understand, like, if Georgia play on those front 3 courts, it's going to be packed. It's going to be amazing. That's like one of the best things in college tennis. But it only applies to that team on those courts. I think the answer is you go more community-based. If you look at like softball, these types of things, they don't do it on campuses. But I think what the USTA or NONA is looking for, and I don't want to speak for them, but if we commit long-term to, let's say, NONA, they make that where it's an annual community-based event where you're not reliant on the home team being in it for a crowd to show up. It becomes like a community event. You could run conventions around it. You could run community events around it where there's just going to be people there. I think like an example is, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Ojai, right? The Pac-12 tournament for years and years and years was at Ojai in California.
Yeah.
And it becomes like a tennis festival.
Right.
That's not dependent on who's playing. It's just the fact that there was people playing and we're playing with tennis people, so we're there. So I think it would be better if we committed to a community. NONA to me seems the obvious one, but I think if you want fans, it's this idea of the campus thing where to me, that's only going to be the home team. Like I can tell you if Cal plays Texas A&M on NC State's courts, like there'd be like 7 squirrels watching.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe some traveling Cal fans, but like, it's just not going to happen, but I think if you make it a community event, I think the USTA has the ability to do that. NONA, where they could get it. Like they could bring, for example, the USTA conference at that time. We could have the ITA conference at that time. You could have, who's based there? Is it the PTR or the PTT? You could have like their conference at the same time. You could have a junior tournament at the same time because of the way that facility works. You would have a bunch of people who are in the tennis industry around it. I think that would get fan participation up. But yeah, that is the knock, is some of these matches, there's not a huge amount of people hanging around. Andy and I have been lucky to have been at some of these high-end ITF events. a 75K semifinal final, I hate to break it to people, there's not a ton of people out there either.
Oh, yeah.
Well, even the big time televised matches from the majors, it's just like people are watching just some marquee players.
Yeah.
That's really sad too.
It's all scheduling. Well, like Indian Wells, like you were saying, David, Indian Wells now, they have the college event out there during that time, and that seems to do quite well. I think the community idea is right on. I mean, obviously each team, you'd think they get their community involved to come watch them play. But for college tennis as a big picture, yeah, just to have some bigger events like that where everybody can come get and get to know some of the players as well, marketing behind that.
I mean, if anybody's ever seen Ojai, like Ojai is an incredible event.
Yeah.
People, it's just people just walking around like, oh, they'll watch anybody play anywhere.
Yeah, small town too. That helps.
Old guy. Here's probably the most important question. Andy Fitzell has got a survey going, and we saw you on TV. We saw Scotty Perelman, TCU men doubles. TCU is playing Michigan. Now, I text Scotty right away. Scotty and I go way back. We worked for Vic Braden back in the late 70s, early 80s. The pro was wearing shorts. You were wearing long sweatpants. So I knew that the Pearl was wearing no socks. So I sent Pearl a text. I said, Pearl. I'm watching you on TV and you're not wearing socks. And I went through my thing, TTT versus BBB, like tiny tin testicles versus big breast balls. And so with that, the Pearl said, I'm the exception. So the question is, do you wear full socks or do you wear half socks?
Full socks. In my equipment guy says to me, "Do you want full socks or half socks?" I said, "I'm male. I'm sorry I didn't put my pronouns on the email to you with my sizes, but I'm a male. I wear full socks. Women's socks cut at the ankle." I've asked Simon this question many times. Why is that? No, this is a new thing to me. In Europe, we don't have this idea. It's like, these are men's socks, these are women's socks, and be it, but no, full socks, no, it's either full socks or no socks. There's none of this half stuff is weird to me.
There's a local pro here at Wintergreen, and I gave him a hard time the first day I came in. He's wearing sweatpants, and I said, let me see what you got going on right there. And it was short socks, and I was like, oh man, it's disappointing. But he's gone 2 days in a row now with, I'll just say, normal socks. He's going for 3 in a row tomorrow.
Yeah, he questioned you on the guilt trip.
Yeah, I guilted him into it a little bit.
Don't you find that the short socks, they're like really thin? I don't understand how your feet just don't get chewed up.
Yeah, I mean, it's when legends die, Like, when I first saw Andre do it, it's like, come on, Andre, what are you doing? Leave it to Steffi.
Back to something less serious than the socks. In the end, it's the tournament in the fall. You think it's going to be for the best?
I'd say 50-50. I think the second year of the pilot's going to be key. There needs to be a little bit of a refinement of the qualifying events. Like it was decent this year, but there was some confusion about who gets into what qualifying event and the criteria of that. That needs a little cleaning up. I think if they get that cleaned up, I still think it's 50-50 there. Like, there are some people who just, in their mind, it has to be at like a Georgia at the end of the team event. It has to go, it's like this idea, it has to go back. And I have a huge respect for Georgia. I'm in Georgia right now. I've seen that event full on, but I just think long term, I think it's better that everybody arrives at the national championships fresh. And that's the focus for that week, because I've been in the situation 3 times where I've been there for 18 days from the team event to the final of NCAA singles or doubles. And that's longer than a Grand Slam. Like, it's too much to me. This event, everybody arrived fresh. Nobody had been playing the match of their life 2 days in a row before the event started, playing against someone who hasn't played a tennis match for 2 weeks. That's not reasonable to me that you expect people to do that. So I'm for the fall. I do understand this idea of like how it was and this and that, but to me, the argument, well, this is what we always do, doesn't hold too much for me.
Seems like too, some players don't come in the fall at all. They're out playing try to compete, and then they just come in the spring. It seems like it would push
that's
them
their choice, right?
Yeah. But it seems like it would push them to come to play in the fall as well.
I mean, I think if you can make it more rewarding as well, like, I mean, they're tying a lot of wild cards to these events and things now. I think if you sweeten the pot and say, look, the winner of NCAA's gets this, or winner of this, like with this accelerator program and things like this, you have to give people motivation to do it. But I've just been in a situation where we've lost an NCAA final at 9:00 at night. We get back to the hotel 11 o'clock, 11:30, scrounging for food. You got a senior who's like broken mentally, and then you were supposed to go out and play again 9 hours later.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not going to happen. Like that. How can you tell me that she's going to play well?
Dave, let's talk about development for a minute. We'll come back and we could beat up on Spencer Johnson, which we've already done anyway. He's an insider for us. That's not a problem. He's family. But I watched 4 matches of Spencer's. Then I watched 1 match of doubles, so a gal that you had sent to us this summer. Then I watched just 1 set of the women's doubles final and 1 set of the men's final. With patterns of play, let's go singles. Don't you think it's still predominantly people are just looking to blast a forehand?
Yeah, or just cover a weakness, right? I think it really seems like the tactics are just to cover the technical weakness. I think I watched a bit of the men's final, the Michigan State boy and the Columbia boy, both good athletes, but like, to me, if the Michigan State boy would be able to get up on the line and just put a bit of pressure into that backhand, the Columbia boy was almost exclusively slicing the backhand.
Right. I saw.
And but I think the Michigan State boy, quite frankly, was just letting him. And they're obviously both very, very good tennis players, but no, the patterns, it seems to be more of a pattern of avoidance versus having a bunch of options and then fitting in what happens with that, or which option is going to get you to the aggressive position. But yeah, I would say that's what I'm seeing a lot of. Yeah.
We go with the King's English, or is it the Queen's English? One of the two, but we Americans. But weakness is to go with the plural. But a lot of times you don't even get to see the weaknesses. In other words, no one's really going forward. The last ball hit in the men's final, player from Michigan State, he comes in, racket head awareness. He's early. Releases the swing from the wrist, dumps the ball. It's an approach shot into the net. I think so many people, they're not really looking to, the approach shot becomes the anxiety shot. They're not really looking to hit volleys and overhead. So you can watch matches and not even know if people have weak volleys because you don't get to see them hit volleys. No,
you're seeing just the same rallies happen a lot. You just don't really see them in all situations where, like, how many times, and these are like, I mean, like that, I've been around those guys. Like, these are not small guys. I mean, that Michigan State boy, he's a big, strong kid, right? Like, how many times did he make the Columbia kid hit off like 1 foot, like off balance? Like really like stretching him this way and that. I mean, most of the time, like one guy's taking a full swing at the ball, the other guy, and it lands quite short, and the other guy has time to take a full swing on that ball. Like, there's just not a lot of time being taken away. So you're right. There are multiple weaknesses, but they're not really getting exposed. It's more kind of like a war of attrition and spirit, right? And they're really good at that. Like physically they can go and they're really good competitors, and they're wearing guys down, and they're doing it over multiple days. But, yeah, you guys say, like, is that going to work long term against guys who are going to come up and hit through them at the higher levels and play closer to the line? I don't know. I don't know about that.
They're better at their own system, better at doing that.
Yeah.
And then the doubles. I did watch really more than one set where Virginia, they beat UCLA. But Virginia, I read where every match they won in a 10-point breaker. What are your thoughts on that? Don't you think it'd be better, I put a shout out to Chuck Creasy, is not to play the 10-point tiger, but to play a third set?
I just like to play more. Like we brought the rule back this year where we're playing 2 sets of doubles in the fall, and it's so much better. Like we were playing like these 1 sets or pro sets the last few falls, especially with freshmen. Like it's just the more sets they can play, the better they're getting at tennis. It's not just that they're getting better at doubles. Like if they play more double sets, they get better at tennis. Like the singles gets better. I would love to play more, but the fact that we've gone 2 sets in a breaker now is actually an improvement, because we were playing like pro sets through the fall or 1 sets of doubles.
Yeah,
so it's better.
Yeah, crazy. You played at 6. It's not even divisible by 4.
With a no ad.
No ad. So it's better, but yeah, 3 sets would be even. But the weird thing is the logic in doubles. It's like, well, in doubles we play 2 sets in a breaker, but in singles we play 3 sets. In doubles, like, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, I feel like I could go out there and play a few sets of doubles right now. I don't think I get that tired. To me, you should be longer to be able to play in doubles, and it goes quicker anyway. So it's like, I don't know why we play shorter in doubles but longer in singles.
Especially if you were to play serve volley doubles.
Oh yeah,
boom, boom, and boom.
Yeah, just stole it. Yeah, but no, I mean the doubles is. I mean, the women's doubles is. I mean, they're not serve volleying, but I think a lot of times, for the more part, they are actually a little bit more aggressive. The men's doubles, you can see the teams straight away. The teams that come forward. I mean, I watched a decent match, Florida State and Wake. They were on the court before us, all 4 coming forward behind their serve. I mean, it flows so much better. And, you know, it doesn't mean they're necessarily winning against some of these guys, because some of these guys from the baseline can give them a tough ball. But yeah, the doubles is tough fun. It's tough to watch. But again, you just watch the top doubles in the world, a lot of college guys who literally are just right on the net and coming forward. And I understand if they can't come in on the serve, but they can certainly come in on the next ball. It's not necessarily how you get there, but can you just get there, right?
For our listeners, I've said this before, that D3 tennis on the men's side, it's been so much I formation. And it's not both players coming to the net. It's just someone serving big and the person at the net moving left or right. Yeah. But I think as far as young people learning how to play, I think it'd be best to do a lot of training where they're not playing formations.
Yeah,
where they're just keeping their house. You're playing deuce court, you serve, you come in. We practice all the time where you initially say there's no poaching. So at least, automatic return cross court. So then in practice, the player's learning to serve and volley. But I think from a developmental standpoint, to 6 seasons at NC State, how many players do you think where it's really transformational, where they come into college with one game and they leave college with another?
The 4-year players. I mean, the 4-year players, that most of the ones we got, they had like a serious deficiency technically. And over 4 years, we were able to iron that out, where it's funny, a lot of times it's like they actually end up hitting that shot cleaner than maybe, let's say, their strength. They're never going to have quite the confidence on it, but it's certainly the shot that they trust. But if I think of all of those players, like Rajecki, basically was told coming into college, no topspin backhands, only slice, but let's just hit a forehand. We just did the opposite with her. We taught her how to hit a backhand. And we just made her stand up on the line and hit backhands. Jada Daniel, I have a film of her before she came to us she was NCAA champion, #1 in doubles. I have a film of her playing doubles before she came to us. She served 2 service games in 8 points. She double faulted 7 times. And coach, you're hearing the stuff like it's mental, it's the legs, it's this. It's like she had a palm up serve. I mean, she just had a palm up serve. Like Rogers with the forehand. We know those ones, they went through a transformational process with their game. There's someone like Snyder or Prisco who came quicker. It was more of like the tactical stuff. There's a little bit of the technical stuff, but they were playing a lot. They didn't really have the summertime to do that type of work. Plus they were already an accelerated thing. But you're talking about like someone like Diana with the backhand doubles. You'll see her now. She plays the outside. She could not really hit a backhand return. We put her on the deuce side for a year for that exact reason. The only way you're going to get the amount of the reps we're doing in practice and then the reps you need to get in the match, you're going to play doubles on the deuce side. I sometimes talk to her now. She's saying, "Are you going to watch my doubles match?" I'm like, "Are you playing on the deuce?" And she's like, "No." And I'm like, "Well, then I'm not watching." If you don't keep working on that, like we do things like that. Yeah, because if you're going to have to do it. Because once you get to a certain level, you can't just hide. The speed's going to find that shot, you know?
Dave, I know holiday season here, not to keep you too much. I've got one more question. I know Andy may have one or two more, but for young coaches listening, you were in the private sector as a junior coach for a long time and now in college. And obviously it's, case by case study or based on the individual, but what are the pros and cons? What comments would you make on those two different walks of life, being a junior coach or being a college coach?
I think they complement each other. I think I was a college coach first, and then when I came into the junior sector, I could really help parents and players where, to be honest, the goal was, it was college prep, right? Like ATA, where I was in Irvine, Advanced Tennis Academy, the goal was to get those players to college. And it's to me, it's the best goal. Like your kid can go through junior tennis and go get a scholarship or go get into a school that maybe they wouldn't get into otherwise. So I was able to help there. I think it can complement both. Then the education I went through, obviously Jimmy and Brandon were very adamant that I need to get with the GreatBase program. I got introduced to you. Then for me, being able to take those skills back to college where you don't see that skill set really, it's more about this performance and winning and this and that and kind of hiding the weaknesses. Whereas we can approach it the other way where it's like, no, we can develop your weaknesses. You can turn this into a strength. So I think they complement each other very well. There's, the pros and cons of it are obviously in college, the job security, certainly at my level, we're very lucky as coaches. We have tremendous job security. I got my eyes really open to that. Andy's obviously experienced this on the WTA level. Like, my God, like you can have a bad week and it's like your life changes. We have bad weeks at NC State, don't get me wrong, but unless I throw a chair at Zampado, I'm probably not going to have to have a new job next week, but I've thought about it, but it just keeps going. The job security and the long-term security for families and things like that is awesome. Being around education is great. In the private sector, obviously, there's a little bit less job security. It is quite a competitive market. I was very lucky because Jimmy obviously took tremendous care of me. Brandon, set me up so well to do well. But the good thing about the private sector is you're just dealing with so many different ends of the spectrum where you really get a chance to develop your skills as a coach, because you could be working with an 8-year-old at 3, and then you can have a top 20 ITF kid coming to you at 4. And you really got to, and what you really learn is they're both the same kid. They're just different sizes and maturities. And in the skill set is the skill set, but you really get a chance to hone your skills, I think, a little bit more in the private sector. And obviously, college has different skills with the recruiting skills and the travel and the logistics that you have to deal with. Those are great things to learn. There's definitely a business side to it. So they complement each other, to be honest. I think I've heard you say it's one of the best ways to be balanced is to be off balance. And I think if you work in both, as a college coach, when I came into the private sector, I was off balance at first. I was like, whoa. Like, this is, okay, I really got to get up to speed. And then when I went to Division I college, I'd never been in that. And obviously I was lucky because Simon had been in there a few years and cleared the path a little bit. But then I was like, okay, what are these guys doing? Like, this is not what we were doing at Armstrong in Division II. And I was off balance again. And it's good for you. It's really good for you if you're trying to develop and really become well-rounded.
I hear that's a great answer. Thanks. With Jimmy Johnson, this year coming up, 2025, chronologically, I met him 40 years ago. Jimmy's always got a smile on his face. From Brandon Fallon, like Jimmy, he can bring a smile on your face. I remember Brandon, he really helped my son Connor loosen up and have some pretty good wins in junior tennis. Young Canadian girl met Andy for the first time, Andy Fitzell, and she said, "Have you been on the podcast?" And Andy said, "I'm the founder of the podcast."
I am the podcast.
Then he said, and on top of that, use my name in third person, I invented Steve Smith. And then the girl goes, "Really?"
I remember Andy Fitzell living at the Park Western Apartments, working at ATA. We're using that court with Connor, and then Who's that tall boy from Seattle? Kevin? Who's a really nice guy?
Yeah, Kevin Lynch. Yeah.
Great guy.
I spent some time with Andy in those apartments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not probably not as long, but I was out there.
I did get your face out there online a little better, though.
Southern Cal. My face. What a beautiful face.
Handsome.
Andy Fitzell, the face for radio. What question do you have for the young man? Fitzell, ask him another question.
Thanks, David, for your time. You seem very well informed on all of this and well spoken about all these rules. I don't know if every college coach is as well informed as you are, but this has been great. I think I
live next door to Simon Earnshaw. If you don't know, you're gonna know. Yeah.
I just think whenever we talk to a college coach, it's a loaded question, but just advice for parents and players, maybe some general advice, because there's a lot of listeners that are either parents or players that are looking to play college tennis as a goal.
Just don't be afraid to communicate. I think a lot of, kids have this idea that they get like this one shot at things and they're going to blow it. Like, got to communicate, got to get out there. I think number one thing I'd say, don't ever think that not playing is a good answer. Like, if I don't play, I won't screw anything up. Like, just tennis players play. Like, you have to get out there and play and be seen, and you have to get your results out there where people can see them. And like I said, now a lot of what we do, like, I know you're pretty good on a laptop. Ivan's definitely much better on a laptop than we are, but with our software now, we can get the matches off YouTube through our stats package. I can get it on 12 hours. I can have the whole match charted by our software. So, even if we're not there live, we can get very good information. So I just think you've got to get out there. You've got to figure out what's best, but with the college stuff, communicate early. Understand that it's not all going to be sunshine and rainbows. That people do have their idea about like dream schools and this, that, and the other, but a lot of it is timing. Like, do they have the spot for you at that time? Do you fit with what they're thinking? Recruiting is very different year to year. This year, like, we don't have a scholarship at NC State technically open until 2026, which is crazy to think of. Like, we had 4 seniors last year. The year before that, we had 2 seniors plus Diana turning pro. So we lost 7 scholarships in 18 months. Now we don't have a scholarship for 3-year cycle. So some of it is timing with these colleges. And I think sometimes parents just think it's always like, well, this is the school we're fixed on. But you don't know where that school's arriving in their recruiting cycle either. And that can be to your benefit or that could be to your detriment. But the biggest thing is like, just as soon as the recruiting cycle's open, which is in the middle of summers for the rising juniors, just communicate. Get on the emails first. You don't have to write your life story. I started tennis when I was 6 and I'm inspired. Like, just give some factual information, contact information, and then, set up meetings at these opportunities to get in front of these coaches and let them see you. And that's the biggest thing, because you'd be shocked with us. Like, Simon is an incredible recruiter. I'm okay. Like, I'm a solid recruiter, but I'm not bad anymore, but I'm like solid. But Simon is an incredible recruiter. Like, he knows who you are, like someone like Earnshaw, and he's going to give me a list. And the players that make an effort on top of that, they just go straight to the front of the queue. Because, at the end of the day, we're splitting hairs. The levels are so close, right? But you'd be amazed how many times the players who end up with us are actually the ones who contact us before we get to them. And sometimes we can't respond to them because of the limits and that, but the communication piece is key, because a lot of people, they think maybe, I'm just fixated on one school, but if that doesn't work out, they might have lost 3 other opportunities at schools that they don't know a lot about, but are just incredible. Yeah. And I'm not just talking about Division 1, but like the Division 3s, Division 2s, especially I think domestically with the American players, some of the Division 3 opportunities. A good example for me, I was absolutely ignorant to the military schools before I worked at ATA. I just had 2 girls graduate from West Point who could not have had a better experience or like education. Like, one of them studying medicine in Cambridge in England, which is like the Harvard of England. The other one I just talked to the other day, she just finished her master's at MIT and she has a security clearance. So she just called me for a reference. I was like, okay, so you just graduated from West Point, you have a master's for MIT. Like, is McDonald's hiring? Like, you think you're going to be okay? Like, So there's so many things out there that people get fixated on certain schools, but there's so many of these things out there you don't know about. I did not know about them. And if you do a little bit of research and communicate and just have these conversations, there's some really, really cool opportunities out there for people. And it can be a bit of a slog, the recruiting. There can be some disappointments, but I think the situations overall with this what's called the house settlement, I think there's going to be more money in tennis in 2 years than there is today, which is good.
Well, and you and Simon both being from England, and you've done well with English players. So then you have the English Federation knocking on your door, right?
We have lots of conversations. Yeah, I have 3 players from, if you've ever been to England, the ring road around London is called the M25. I have 3 from inside the M25. I'm from inside the M25. Simon gets a little nervous that I don't want all these London people around me. But no, we have a good relationship with the LTA. They're really supporting our player that graduated. They're starting to see the value in college tennis. They're still hesitant to let players go. We have a lot of meetings with them. I had a meeting with them at the French Open 2 years ago. Some of these guys are my peers in age. They're above me in the world. If you're the head of a federation, you're above an assistant coach. But I opened my meeting with, right now, guys, NC State has more points at the French Open than the LTA. And I wasn't lying, because we did. Because they didn't win any matches in the first round, and we did. So I was like, I'm not trying to be funny, but there's something to this college thing.
Yeah.
So we got some opportunities, and we have some English kids who, for us, it's a direct flight from London. They're 7 hours on a plane, and they're in Raleigh. They go home. Like we joke, like I'm going to go home to London in 3 weeks. All my players are pretty much on the same flight. Like half of the NC State team and staff are just flying home on a direct flight to London. My son's going.
I think this is where it's appropriate for me to say, we had a war to get rid of you guys. Keep the English out. The Minutemen, they should have been there in 59 seconds.
If you had just had that vote and spoken German, a lot of these problems would have went away.
Yeah, 1776. It's true. That's the vote.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Close, right?
It was one vote.
It was close.
One vote to German, right? When it would have been the native tongue of we Americans.
And I heard there were rumors that the English rigged the vote.
Yeah. Actually, Andy brought an English player here. We played the Beatles today during practice.
Where's that boy from?
Yeah, I don't know exactly. London. Yeah.
Oh, he's a
but I don't know exactly.
Good lad then. Good lad then. Yeah, he's a good lad then.
He's a good lad then.
He likes Chelsea. I think he likes Chelsea football. What's that?
He's from even better lad then. Even better lad.
There you go.
Top lad, we would say. Yeah.
How about your son? Does he know the difference? I mean, does he know real football is played with your feet, or have you got him throwing footballs?
He does. My son is very culturally aware. He's a geography nut.
How old is he now?
7. He thinks he's 14, but he's 7. He likes soccer. He did soccer camp this summer. The NC State coaches made a fuss with him, had him in. We tried flag football. I loved it. He hated it. He loves swimming though. That boy lives to swim. He practices in a very good program. He loves swimming. He lives and dies on swimming. He's hitting the ball pretty well now. Tennis for him is like a contractual thing. I'm like, we got to play tennis. He's like, okay, once a week, we'll go up there. We go up on a Sunday. We'll go for like 2 hours. He just doesn't enjoy it. He hits the ball well. He'll do what he's told, but
what does he get out of it?
He just loves swimming.
Does he get ice cream, or what's the contract?
The contract is like, I just tell him, you can't make me look bad when you come out like tennis camp and stuff. Or when you see the girls, like they always want to hit with you. You just can't embarrass me. He's like, all right, I'll get the swings down. So he just he's not interested in it. Like it doesn't excite him.
I have respect for swimmers, having spent so much time in Florida. There's so many facilities in Florida that have basically 3 sports: golf, tennis, and swimming. And the swimmers are the ones that are up in the morning before school, hitting the pool. And certainly the chilly air of Florida can be cold. And then up and down the lane, over and over again. It's just like they embrace the boredom. I mean, I think it's great if
he did a mock meet on Sunday, right? So it's just an inter-squad, like it's just his team. They swim against each other. It's full competitive, everything, right? He gets out of the pool, he does the meet. Parents aren't allowed on deck. I'm just up in the stands watching it on the big screen with the times. He comes out. He doesn't tell me where he finished. He just tells me he has his timesheet. We get the old timesheet. He just wants my phone. He says, how much did I improve? So like for him, we say, he's a math kid. He really likes math. Did I improve by 5% over the last month? He doesn't care if he came first, second, eighth.
That's great.
He just says, what was my times? Did I improve? What are you going to buy me? That's what he's like. He knows if I hit the 5%, we're going shopping. That's how swimmers think. They don't care if they won the race. It's just like, did I swim faster than last time? Am I improving?
Well, they have a benchmark. If it's Michael Phelps, I mean, that's where the UTR is, to me, very consistent or very spot on, accurate. Where if someone, hey, this player was with Andy, he broke the 5-minute mile with his tennis team, and that's respectable. The old Bruce Dern, you can't BS a stopwatch. Yeah. You're measured by a tape or by a clock.
That's how the coaches report. Like his coaches, they send us a report every month, right? And they'll say like, we're working on this technique, we're working on this technique. And at the end of it, they published all the times, and they say, okay, the group has improved by this much on this stroke, percentage-wise. They put it out there. Like it's like an audit for them. And they'll say like, okay, for example, like freestyle this month didn't make the 5% mark, right? It was like 3.8% improvement. So we're going to spend an extra session or two on freestyle this month. The coaches are like that too. So the coaches are very transparent and honest about it. And I really like the swimming culture. It's great to be around.
It's a public pool?
Yeah, it's like the Carey Tennis Park of swimming. It's where the Team USA Olympics are. It's you know that Carey was supposed to be the Lake Nona, right? Lake Nona was going to be in Carey. So we have Carey Tennis Park, which is beautiful. Andy, I remember you borrowing my car there once. Who were you with there?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, with me, Mikael Torpegard.
Torpegard, yeah. So we have Carey Tennis Park. We have Carey Soccer Park. That's where the college soccer championships are. Team USA trains. Carey Baseball Park. That's where Team USA Baseball is. And then we have the Triangle Aquatic Center, which is really Carey Swimming Park. It's this state-of-the-art, beautiful swimming facility. And like the Olympians train there. He got to go watch the Olympians practice before they went to Paris. It's so nice. Like and it's affordable. It's all community-based. It's like beautiful. No, he trains there 4 days a week.
Oh, for our listeners, Carey Tennis Park. What a beautiful place. Bill King, father of Kevin King. My son Connor played some doubles with Kevin. I did video work for him. And Bill kept telling me about Carey Park. And at that time, they were looking for a director of player development. And I wasn't interested at that time, but I recommended Matt Clore. He did that for a year. But I went up, and when Matt was there, I went up there to train the coaches. And it was like, wow. That was before they built their covered courts, but it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
And they just done a bond to expand it more. They're gonna up it. They're gonna redo the whole stadium, the locker room, and they're gonna add courts as well. Right. We host the All-American there, the women's All-American with Duke and UNC. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
beautiful place to play tennis.
Well, and what they have in walking distance, there's an elementary school, junior high. It's like amazing place.
Yeah.
With Dave Secker, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
Communication and play.
Communication and play. All right.
Play.
Enjoy the rest of the holidays. Safe trip overseas. All the best to you and your family.
Yeah, David, thanks.
And we'll see you down the road.
Likewise, be safe, and we'll see each other soon.
All right. Thanks again.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Sharp guy. Oh, yeah.
Well informed. Yeah, well informed on that.
The English accent helps too.
It does help.
But I got to go back to socks. So in your world, for sure, you've got Dave Anderson, who's been a guest many times, and Dave Secker's been a guest many times.
Got to give him a hard time, yeah.
That would mean that Dave Secker is a superior coach because he wears full socks. Is that than Dave Anderson? Would you go that?
He looks the part.
He looks the part.
Definitely looks the part.
Definitely looks the part. Plus, we know that Anderson's not high performance.
That's right. That's right. Sorry, Dave.
He's low performance, or he hasn't gone through that USTA high performance course
not
yet.
Quite there. He does a good job, but it's not quite there.
Yeah. Dave Secker. Well informed is well informed. I enjoyed that. Podcast 226.
It's good to be back at
in
the
the
table
books.
with you,
Very
Smith. Happy
great to
birthday
have
again.
you. Yeah. Thank you. Happy birthday. Yes. 70, 70, 70.
Back in the chair.
Thanks for starting the GreatBase Tennis podcast, Fitzell. A nightmare of pleasure, not a nightmare of work. No, I hope it's certainly of value to our listeners.
Yep.
All right, Andy, wave goodbye to the camera. Good night. Adios, amigo.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Yvonne.